Really interesting question. A couple of aspects to this isn't there? Between firstly, what does it mean to be British and Asian? Right? Being Asian is being steeped in cultural heritage, whereas I guess Britishness is about the modernity of everyday life within Britain. But I think the one thing that, at least in my experience, has kept me attached to my cultural heritage has been my mother tongue. Now, for the sake of the audience, I come from my parents at least come from a village in Pakistan known as Attock. In that region, there is a very specific mother tongue, if I can use that term, called Hinko, right? So we're known as Chachis. Shout out to any of the Chachis in the audience there. But that's the language that I grew up with, and that's the only language that I converse with my mum, because that's the only language that she understands. She can't speak English herself. So that was our way of really keeping attached to the culture of our parents and to our household and to our cultural heritage. Fast forward, many years now. I mean, I have a nephew and niece, and for them, I guess English is the primary language. Not to say that they can't, our mother tongue, but probably not as well versed as we were when we were growing up. So I do think that it's a shame that we are losing aspects of that. The other thing I would also say is that, look, one language I've always wanted to learn is Urdu, right? I know, Aslan, that's you're as fluent as they come in that sense. Now, I understand Urdu absolutely. And my mum actually, used to be an Urdu teacher as well, and she had aspirations of me learning Urdu for a very, very long time. So I understand Urdu. I just probably speak it in a broken way. But Urdu is another thing, right? It's another way of us communicating and keeping close tabs with our cultural heritage. Sometimes when I go into an Uber or whatever else and you have the taxi driver speaking Urdu with you, there's a sense of pride there. You can immediately relate to them through the language itself. And whereas if you can't do that, you're always going to have that detachment a little bit. So I think for me, absolutely, language is so important. We get the need for speaking English. I mean, there's another point to be talked about, which is our parents. A lot of them didn't necessarily learn English, even despite being in this country for such a long time, and maybe that's a shortcoming on their part. But at the same time, it's language is just absolutely crucial, and the more languages you can be versed in, particularly if it's rooted within your cultural heritage, it has to be a good thing.
Definitely. Out of curiosity, in terms of that next generation, so Abdurrahman, your niece and nephew, and same perspective from you, Hasnain, how do they interact with your parents? Is it in English? Is it in broken bits of Urdu and Inco? Or is it worlds apart?
So I can start off with that. Yeah, it's probably in kind of a broken sense. I mean, they do try, but it's not quite as fluent as we can speak. But that's the only language that my mum, for example, understands. Right? There's going to be that little bit of a communication barrier. I think we're doing quite well in that sense, in giving them exposure to that, but it's not quite as strong as perhaps we were, because that's the only language that we spoke in the house.